Welcome. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this presentation. My name is Allison Hill, and I will kick off our session starting with a brief overview of our firm, and then I will turn over our session to my co-presenter, Lori Wagner. First, RLAC has over 2 decades of experience in providing high-quality professional development. Our accredited evidence-based multisensory structured language methods ensure regulated consistency and exceptional quality of instruction. RLAC not only provides a framework to guide teacher collaboration, but helps to build leadership capacity both at the teacher and administrator level. We foster a dynamic culture because our programs are diagnostic and can be utilized for remediation or enrichment. We adhere to the assurances issued by the National Institute of Child Health, Human and Development longitudinal studies on reading skills, as well as the National Reading Panel's 2000 recommendations. Now I'd like to switch over to Lori Wagner. She has been a professional educator for 27 years. She was an elementary classroom teacher for Los Angeles Unified Schools and has been the Director of Education for RLAC for the last 18 years. She is a master trainer in the accredited Phonics-Based multisensory Orton-Gillingham-based reading program and helped develop the reading intervention curriculum titled Foundations for Reading and Spelling for our elementary population, and then Structures for Reading and Spelling for our secondary population. Lori regularly consults with teachers and schools and administrators, providing ongoing professional development as well as on-site job-embedded coaching. She has extensive experience in teaching our beginning, struggling, and learning disabled readers K through 12.
Thanks, Allison. Research on the brain and its role in reading shows us that the ability to read is not a natural process we're born prepared for, and yet it's integral to every aspect of school and learning. Further, reading research shows time and time again that direct instruction of decoding and encoding skills must be taught with clear intention to discrete skills and with depth of teacher expertise. These are non-negotiable instructional foundations necessary for reading achievement. I'll be sharing how the Phonics-First multisensory approach to reading and spelling prepares your teachers and students to reach literacy success. To start, let me share the essence of what Phonics-First is. Phonics-First is a method of instruction embedded with powerful multisensory teaching strategies to empower your teachers with the knowledge and tools to both strengthen your core reading program and to supplement reading instruction for students who struggle. Are you familiar with Orton-Gillingham? Or maybe you've just heard that popular term before. Phonics-First is rooted in its methodologies and principles of instruction, which I'll be detailing later in our discussion. Here you can see that Phonics-First encompasses 3 options for reading support, reaching your K to 12th grade students. Phonics-First Beginnings ensures your K teachers thoroughly understand and systematically instruct your youngest developing readers in all the critical phonological awareness skills that directly influence reading and spelling development. Your teachers then learn to tie those phonological skills directly to their beginning reading and spelling lessons, which are built on the foundation of phonological awareness. Further, thorough understanding of how those 2 stages of reading development are connected helps teachers understand what skills they may need to go back to when they later find deficits in struggling readers. Phonics-First Foundations is implemented by your 1st to 3rd grade classroom teachers and 1st to 5th grade interventionists, resource, special ed, and other teachers to ensure your beginning, at-risk, ELL, and struggling students master all decoding and encoding skills necessary for reading and spelling success. And then finally, your middle school and high school students identified with reading deficits receive instruction using Phonics-First structures. I know from personal experience the kind of challenges we have meeting the needs of these older struggling readers. So Structures carefully weaves the basic Anglo-Saxon skills of decoding and encoding in with the interesting and more advanced approach to word study, or morphology. The morphology lessons emphasize words with Greek and Latin roots and affixes, which make up over 65% of the more complex text your students need to be reading at this level. Structures allows your struggling adolescent readers to build strength in decoding, encoding, fluency, and vocabulary needed to reach comprehension success. First and foremost, Phonics First is tied to the Common Core standards for reading, language, literature, informational text, and writing. It is essential districts consistently tie instruction back to these standards. As you will see throughout this discussion, Phonics First emphasizes the skill-building blocks that strengthen all these core areas. I strongly encourage you to go to our website where you can download the full documentation containing specific examples of exactly how Phonics First is correlated to the Common Core standards. You'll see this documentation at the bottom of our homepage. Districts also need to consider response to intervention when planning literacy instruction. Phonics First is the perfect fit for supplementing instruction at all tiers of RTI, based on flexible grouping determined by your ongoing assessments. This means you don't need to add yet another program for each tier of RTI, but rather you use Phonics First at all tiers with varying levels of intensity and intention. Let's talk about how Phonics First is used in each tier. In Tier 1, your teachers use Phonics First strategies with your existing core reading program to differentiate instruction. Just by adding our multisensory strategies into current daily instruction, your teachers will reach more of their struggling and at-risk students during each lesson. This means students who might otherwise get lost or struggle with new learning are automatically supported. Classroom teachers also use Phonics First for these students in targeted small groups, meaning students get additional practice opportunities for mastery. For Tier 2 students, Phonics First addresses skill gaps identified by assessments. Teachers can target specific areas of weakness in decoding and encoding with purposeful instruction and guided practice, building on the strategies already in use in their classrooms. Phonics First is then implemented as an intensive remediation program in Tier 3. Using Phonics First with maximum intensity and frequency ensures your significantly below-level students receive comprehensive and intensive instruction in critical foundational reading skills. When Phonics First is used in all tiers, students and teachers benefit from a seamless set of common instructional strategies used to support students throughout the day, wherever they are and by whoever is teaching them. I'm sure you can imagine how invaluable this consistency of learning is for your struggling readers. We definitely understand how important it is for your schools to follow best practices for teaching and learning. I'm sure you're aware that research clarifies the critical nature of explicit and systematic instruction and its role in reading for all students. But most importantly, this explicit and systematic instruction is especially critical for those who need intensified learning that goes beyond your core program. Phonics First assures your teachers have skills and specific strategies that apply best practices throughout all their lessons. Here you can see that our systematic and direct instruction encompasses all those big areas of reading identified in these research studies. Are you familiar with the term multisensory structured language, also known as MSL instruction? Phonics First is an MSL approach, meaning it incorporates all the principles of Orton-Gillingham instruction and teaches students by integrating all the learning pathways. To ensure we meet the highest standards in this field, we hold accreditation under IMSLC, or the International Multisensory Structured Language Education Council. Our accreditation ensures our programs continue to uphold IMSLC's rigorous requirements based on current reading research. As with all accredited multisensory structured language and Orton-Gillingham-based programs, Phonics First adheres to 6 essential principles of instruction. First, all Phonics First instruction is inherently multisensory by design. This, more than anything, is what sets this approach apart from your core and other supplemental reading programs. Multisensory instruction uses all the senses to create learning pathways in the brain. While the strongest pathway is engaged in the primary learning, teachers are simultaneously strengthening the weaker pathways, whatever those may be for each student, through a variety of strategies built into every lesson. Tapping into all learning modalities ensures that new knowledge is moved from short-term to long-term memory, dramatically increasing successful learning outcomes. Teaching to stimulate these multiple learning pathways by applying Phonics-First strategies is a significant way your teachers learn to differentiate their instruction throughout the day. Phonics-First strategies are not only used in reading, but can also be employed in other subject areas as well. I always tell teachers that if they're teaching in at least 2 different modalities during any lesson, they have a much better chance of success with student learning. We know that all children benefit from multisensory instruction. However, it's critical, absolutely critical, for students who struggle to learn. Let's take a look at the other key principles. Our written language is alphabetic by nature and is based on the speech patterns of our oral language. Does it surprise you to know that approximately 85% of our language is phonetically based? That is, if you know the sound combinations and the rules that govern it. However, most of us didn't need to consciously learn all of these combinations and rules in order to learn to read and spell. So we just assume our language is less rule-based than it actually is, simply because we never really needed to learn all of those rules. But if 85% of our language has rules that can be taught, doesn't it make sense to ensure our teachers know all these elements and teach them effectively to students who struggle with reading and spelling? Phonics-First, like all MSL programs, is structured and systematic. When students struggle to learn, it causes anxiety and uncertainty during lessons, making it difficult for them to absorb new information. Teaching them in a structured, systematic way with predictable and repeated strategies helps students know what to expect and what to do throughout the lesson to be successful, giving them confidence to learn more. The order in which skills are taught is organized and logical. Just like learning to play a musical instrument, skills are taught step by step, starting with simple skills and moving to the more complex, much the same way we progress from sounds to words to sentences when we first learn to speak. Just as a building must be built on a strong foundation, so must reading skills be built. Skills are continuously reviewed to the point of automaticity, which aids memory and instantaneous recognition. Skills that were previously taught are regularly included in subsequent lessons, where they provide a strong foundation for new reading and spelling skills to develop. Phonics-First uses explicit or direct instruction. The teacher directly tells the students what they will learn and guides them with multiple opportunities to practice the skill in a variety of different ways. I have to say that after teaching our PD course for almost 20 years, I honestly can't think of a time when teachers haven't expressed during class that they just don't understand why they never learned this much about teaching reading in their university classes. This sentiment is definitely reflected in my own personal experience. When I graduated with my teaching degree, I didn't feel at all prepared to teach reading to kids who were either just learning to read or who struggled with reading. Yes, I knew I could follow a teacher's guide, but I also knew that I really didn't understand what I should know about how to teach reading effectively. Our professional development courses engage teachers in truly learning the science of teaching reading. They learn about the stages of reading development and the most effective instruction needed to reach students where they are within those stages. Our course equips your teachers with the knowledge and tools to confidently instruct beginning, struggling, at-risk, ELL, and dyslexic and learning disabled readers, well beyond the pages of the teacher's guide, which, face it, can never really account for all the possible struggles of our students. Additionally, our job-embedded coaching supports teachers in actively applying their knowledge in the classroom through modeling, observations, and feedback from our master instructors. This is truly where teachers gain confidence and receive individual guidance right in their own learning environment with their own students, which is really the most meaningful kind of learning for anyone. Phonics First teachers are also encouraged to work collaboratively and to share knowledge, strategies, and successful activities with their colleagues in professional learning communities. We believe the job-embedded coaching and peer-to-peer learning should be at the heart of every school's PD plan. Now let's take a look at the strategies and components your teachers use in Phonics First instruction. A critical element in your teacher's understanding of reading instruction lies in phonological awareness. Research has shown this to be the #1 predictor of future reading skill development. In order for students to be fully prepared to read, they must have all these essential phonological skills on the left side fully developed. Teachers who understand the progression of these skills and how they correlate to later acquisition of reading and spelling are better able to guide students during this critical beginning level of learning. Notice here on the left side of this chart, the phonological awareness and language development side, skills develop starting with the biggest components of language, understanding sentences. Then, students must recognize the individualness of words within these sentences. They next learn that words are made up of syllables, and finally that syllables are made up of phonemes, or individual sounds. Further, each of the general areas contain a number of very specific skills, such as blending, segmenting, and manipulation of sounds that also must be mastered. A critical understanding is that every skill on the left is mirrored by and directly supports a skill area on the right side, the phonics, decoding, and encoding side. Notice now on that side, instruction starts with understanding the smallest units, phonemes or sounds, and then builds until students can read and spell words and then sentences. When teachers see the connection between these two sides, they can effectively analyze student reading and spelling errors early on and identify which underlying phonological skills may have been missed that are causing these errors and then teach them to ensure success. This is a general sequence of skills covered in Phonics First, which you can see mirrors the skills of the core reading programs. Students start with basic phonetic patterns at the single and then multisyllable levels and progress through to more advanced concepts needed for reading and spelling. For middle and high school struggling readers, our structures material follows a similar skill path, addressing the basic Anglo-Saxon layers of language, those on the left here, but simultaneously incorporates the study of Greek and Latin roots and affixes, also called morphemes. This makes lessons more sophisticated and engaging for our older students. As I shared with you earlier, 65% of reading materials above a 6th grade level are made up of Greek and Latin roots. The ability to easily recognize and apply them to increasingly larger chunks of language for reading and spelling fluency is absolutely essential at this level. You may be familiar with programs that also include morpheme study after students have mastered the basic skills, but we believe it's important to incorporate morphological study alongside basic instruction, giving students the ability to begin to apply this more sophisticated level of language to reading and spelling sooner rather than later. Phonics First is structured around 5 main components that begin with a review and progress through new learning, culminating in the application of the new skill in guided reading and spelling activities. The 3-part drill is a skill review which builds the automaticity required for fluency. By emphasizing various parts of the drill that tap into different modalities, teachers further differentiate their instruction, focusing on discrete skill areas students are struggling to master. The drill helps break the cycle of memorizing information for the short term and then forgetting what was taught as new concepts are introduced. It's designed to aid memory and processing speed so students instantly recognize common patterns for both reading and spelling. During the visual drill, the teacher shows skill review cards with basic or more advanced phonetic patterns, and students provide the sound or sounds of the letters, building sound symbol fluency. Middle and high school students also review the roots and affixes they're learning. The visual drill directly supports reading. Students practice phonetic concepts in isolation to build the automaticity required to instantaneously apply them while reading words. In the auditory drill, the teacher says a sound or sound group, and the students respond by naming the corresponding letter while writing it in the tactile sand tray. For example, the teacher gives the target sound, G. The students respond saying G, G, naming and writing the letter, giving the sound while underlining the letter left to right. The sand stimulates tactile and kinesthetic learning pathways, which help permanently connect the phonemes with the graphemes. By stimulating an automatic response that connects a specific sound pattern to a specific letter pattern, this part of the drill builds automaticity needed for spelling accuracy. In the structures program, middle and high school students use the technique with roots they're studying. Learning to spell these common morphemes and later building them into words leads to fluency in written language. The blending steps build syllable and word level automaticity, the building blocks of all fluency. The teacher uses known letters and patterns to create syllables. At a beginning level, students systematically sound out the syllables to read the words by pointing to each letter as they read. G, hag. Eventually learning to quickly read whole syllables, plamp. Teachers create combinations of real and pseudo words to determine if students are accurately applying phonetic concepts to unfamiliar word parts, which will later become syllables within multisyllable words. Students who are learning the Greek and Latin roots and affixes blend them to read more advanced words, allowing them to apply known morphological known morphological components to increasingly complex words. New skills are taught using multisensory, hands-on activities. For younger students, it may be letter-sound relationships, such as learning W, web, W. Students construct a web as the hands-on multisensory component. This interactive construction helps solidify the letter-sound connection, linking it to long-term memory. Web is then used as the keyword to trigger recall anytime a student forgets the letter-sound combination. An example of an interactive multisensory activity for older students is pitching and catching a ball, which becomes the multisensory trigger for recall of the ch sound, spelled TCH when it follows a short vowel, such as in pitch and catch. Structure students learn new Greek and Latin root words in addition to phonetic skills and spelling rules. As I said earlier, this is such a critical element of reading at this level. It's said that learning one root can open the door to thousands of new words. And that makes sense if you think about it. If I were to teach the word telegraph strictly as one word to be memorized, we all know the likelihood of recall is small for so many of our students. And even if they do remember it, they've only learned one word. If, however, I teach them that the root tele means far, and gram and graph mean writing, the word telegraph and telegram truly makes sense. Here you can see that knowing that tele means far can begin to unlock many, many unfamiliar words without having to teach each one separately. Immediately after the new concept has been introduced, the students apply it to spelling and reading during word and sentence dictation. Students use the multisensory technique called finger tapping to help them sequence the sounds and spell the words correctly. For example, a student doesn't have to know, meaning memorize, how to spell mat, but can figure it out by systematically tapping a finger for each sound as they say them. Ah, k, and then writing the corresponding letters. They also apply finger tapping to any phonetic word they encounter as they write dictated sentences. Finger tapping becomes a spelling tool for all writing throughout the day. We've carefully constructed dictation so students only spell words that use concepts that have already been taught. This makes them highly successful and builds their confidence. Here, however, you see examples of words and sentences that represent various levels of skills from a variety of lessons. Students in the Structures program learn both phonemes and morphemes and apply the same multisensory strategies to dictation at this level. Here, the students have learned several roots and their medial vowel sounds. Notice they're spelling both words and pseudo-words. But remember, the pseudo-words are actually syllables of larger words, such as hol, holiday, stren, strenuous. The ability to spell these syllables later becomes the building blocks for them to spell more and more complex words. Students learn skills to read single-syllable words and then learn to apply the same skills to reading multi-syllable words. Most phonetic words and syllables can be classified into one of these 8 syllable types, and words can be divided into syllables by recognizing 3-syllable division patterns. This knowledge helps students read unfamiliar words. For many struggling readers, as the words get larger, they don't have a strategy to unlock them, so they make random guesses based on the first few letters, or they skip the word entirely. Either way, meaning is lost and comprehension is diminished. So we often tell these struggling readers to break the words into syllables or chunks, assuming they know where to break it apart. But they often don't recognize syllable boundaries, and they see chunks that aren't always parts of these more complex words. When a student struggles to read complex words, what part of the word do you think gives them the most trouble? It's seldom the consonants, which are fairly consistent sounds. It's mostly the vowels that are problematic. We just have lots of vowel combinations in our language, and most of them make more than one sound. So the syllabication process teaches students a step-by-step strategy to break syllables apart and identify the syllable type, which then tell them exactly which vowel sounds to use as they read the word. In a nutshell, here's what this looks like in very basic steps. The student identifies the 2 vowels in the word, marking them with a V. They connect the vowels with a bridge, which helps them to focus on what lies in between. Then, they identify the consonants in between the vowels and look for one of the 3-syllable patterns, which tells them where to divide. At this beginning stage, the student cuts the word to create separate syllables they can move apart, making the process even more hands-on and multisensory. They identify each syllable type, which tells, They identify each syllable type, which tells them the correct vowel sound to use. Here you can see we have closed syllables, which tell us to use a short vowel sound. Then they read the syllables, lep, tus, and then the whole word, leptus. They're successful reading this unfamiliar but real word because they've learned to separate the word into individual syllables based on the vowel-consonant pattern, identify the vowel sound of each syllable in order to read them, and then blend the syllables together to read the word. Now, think of what your struggling readers might do when faced with this word. They might freeze, or skip the word, or guess. Consonants? The syllabication process helps them see the patterns that unlock complex words. Moving from the basic word we just saw, students learn to put multiple syllable types and patterns together to decode more complex words with ease. So they follow the same steps with the first two vowels, and then divide the pattern. If there are more vowels, they repeat the process for each vowel. And in this word, they also circle the consonant LE pattern recognized at the end. Once the word is divided, the student looks at each syllable and determines what kind it is in order to correctly pronounce it. You can see that this word is a mixture of syllables: closed, short vowels; open, long vowels; and the consonant LE. The labels tell the students how to pronounce each syllable: con, stan, tin, o, pull, Constantinople. In order to move our struggling readers past about a third grade reading level, teaching syllabication is a critical step. Would it surprise you to know that only about 15 to 20% of our words don't follow a phonetic pattern or rule? The more teachers and students learn about the consistency of our language, the less mysterious words become. There are, however, words that don't easily fit into these predictable patterns. These are our red words. You have to stop and memorize these. Any word that's non-phonetic or contains an advanced skill the students haven't learned is considered a red word. Memorization as a learning strategy is very hard for so many of our students. We have students use a combination of arm tapping and spelling words out loud as a neuro-linguistic multisensory technique to aid memorization, successfully moving words from short-term to long-term memory. The students hold a word card in an outstretched hand and look at the word while tapping their arm from shoulder to wrist as they say each letter name: D, O, E, S, does, thereby programming their brain to learn the spelling of the word visually, auditorily, and tactily kinesthetically. Additional steps further engage multiple learning pathways in the learning process. For example, the word is written in red crayon on a screen, creating a bumpy feel to each letter. Then, students trace the bumpy letters to engage tactile learning while also spelling out loud. Finally, students practice putting all of the previous components together in the context of oral reading. Phonics First uses controlled readers for targeted oral reading practice with special emphasis on the exact skill or skills students are learning. Controlled readers are different than leveled readers. Controlled readers are, well, controlled to follow the skill sequence that has been taught, only containing the new skill and skills the students have learned previously. So, for example, if a student hasn't learned the silent E rule or a particular vowel team, the controlled reader won't contain words with silent E or that vowel team. This is a little different than a leveled reader, which may still highlight a specific skill, but also contains a mix of patterns students may or may not have specifically learned. For students who struggle with reading, the use of controlled readers provides them with a highly successful reading experience that builds confidence and fluency. As their decoding skills increase, students move to less controlled text to continue their reading growth. As you have seen, Phonics First gives your teachers a strong foundation in the knowledge and structure of the English language and the expertise to teach that structure to a wide range of learners, both within your existing core program and as a supplemental targeted intervention or remediation. Students who are at risk for failure benefit from instruction that directly teaches specific language skills. All the components and strategies of Phonics First are carefully designed to work together to provide your teachers with a seamless framework upon which students build lifelong reading skills. What kind of results can you expect as your teachers implement Phonics First? This graph shows the impact of Phonics First approach on reading and test scores. In Wyandotte Public Schools, they chose Phonics First for all their K-3 classroom teachers and K-5 intervention and special education teachers. In the classroom, the Phonics First strategies are coupled with their existing core reading program to differentiate learning for all students. Reading and special ed teachers use Phonics First with fidelity to these skills and sequence for their diverse populations of struggling students. As you can see, using this unified school-wide approach led to a 60-point increase in their state reading scores. Like Orion Public Schools chose Phonics First for highly targeted reading instruction across first grade. After implementing Phonics First, they had 30% more students reading at grade level by the end of the year. This urban high school in Orlando implemented Phonics First structures in a highly intense remedial program for their lowest level of students identified by state FCAT test scores. The students needed a 77-point increase to show AYP. The average growth for this class of students was 268 points. The teachers asked them what they learned that they thought helped them the most on the test. Their students cited both the syllabication process and their knowledge of roots and affixes as allowing them for the first time to both read and understand the test. And as a side note, they also said those skills helped them improve in math because they could finally read the questions. I appreciate the time you've taken today to learn more about Phonics First. Feel free to contact me at any time if you have questions about what we've been talking about or need clarification of anything that you've heard. And now Allison is going to close the session with information about your next steps.
Thank you, Lori. As you can see, RLAC has a lot of expertise at your disposal. Those of you who are ready to move forward, the next step would be to set up a needs analysis with either myself or Lori Wagner. This would allow us to determine if we are a good fit, and we could really begin to roll up our sleeves and see if we can tailor a solution for your district or your school. Thank you again for listening, and we look forward to speaking with you very soon.